Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too. We'd like to thank our sponsor, iZotope, the absolute leaders in intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. At iZotope.com, you'll find a plethora of tools and suites that will enhance your audio production, whether it's voice, video, podcast, or a full production recording session. Check out the industry-standard audio repair tool, RX11, or the multi-tool mixer plugin, Neutron 5, or the powerful Ozone 11 mastering suite, plus tons more. Go to iZotope.com and use the code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 to get 10% off at checkout. And again, the website is iZotope.com, IZOTOPE.com.
This is a calling. This isn't something that I'm just doing right now because, I want to meet girls or whatever, like something frivolous. It was like, no, I have to do this. Like, if I don't do this, like, what the fuck else am I going to do with my life?
What's happening? Thank you so much for tuning in to Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our show for August 14th, 2025. I don't know why I paused there. It's like, is that the right date? That is the right date. This is our second week of the Smell Month, celebrating the third year kickoff of the podcast. 2025. Hey. Well, this is quite the future we are living in. It was not the future I thought we'd be living in, but it is a version of someone's future, our present, with someone's strange dystopian picture. All that being said, we're here to talk about The Smell, a bastion of utopian, anarchist, punk, artistic ideas. And my guest this week is Anthony Berryman. Now, let me tell you about Anthony Berryman. He, you heard him there on the front part of it. This is how serious I was taught to take my responsibility at The Smell. We get into this, but Anthony was the guy who gave me his set of keys when he moved to New York. I inherited Anthony's keys in order to help Jim run The Smell, or help, open it up and, make sure the lights were on and someone was there for when the bands showed up. But that is the intensity that you heard for the opening of the show that I was emboldened with to take this responsibility of being a key holder for this all ages space. So I thought, again, when looking at people to talk to about The Smell, obviously Jim Smith is probably the one conversation to have, but that would be the Wikipedia version of it. I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time there and to make a lot of friends. And I think the social part of The Smell for me and my time there is just as important, because that's really what made the whole experience. So I'm going to talk to three friends, to round out this month that really reflect on my personal subjective experience in the early aughts, volunteering at The Smell. And figured, after Jim, the person next in line for my experience at The Smell. And again, this is what's so interesting about a DIY all ages club existing for almost 30 years, is there's so many people that come in and out and play a hugely important role, and then the time comes and they move on and do other things. And this is really Jim's been the one constant and the consistent personality person there. I could talk to Ara Ara and Jarrett, who his partners who originally founded the Smell with him, and eventually they went, on to school, like we heard in Jim's last interview. But I thought, for my personal experience, Anthony Berryman would be the person to talk to, because he's really the person that I literally took the keys from, or was given the keys to the Smell to continue. So I feel like for me, Anthony was a huge part of my early experiences going to the Smell. He was always there. He took it very serious. And I think there was an element to the Smell that was a little bit scary, and going there, because it was like, what is this? This is an unknown sort of wild free-for-all. But because of the seriousness and the sort of like straightforward nature of Anthony being there, that sort of added some type of I don't know, a rail of some sort, some kind of, seemed like, okay, this is serious, and don't mess around, don't get too crazy here. So yeah, I don't know, every version, every era of the Smell has their people. And prior to Dean and I getting, very involved and being there almost on a nightly basis, Anthony was sort of that group who was right before then. And I thought he would be a good person to talk to and sort of, get his story and talk a little bit about his experience there. And obviously you can hear how serious he took it. And that was a huge influence on me. It really set the tone and set my course for how I would, experience the Smell, and what I would, the way I was taught to treat it, and how serious to take it, and how to sort of preserve it, and to be there and hold it, as, in a place of like importance in my life, that it wasn't just a willy-nilly clubhouse kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, I don't know, go sometimes, whatever. Like, no, this felt like a calling, or it felt like a reason to be involved. I took it very serious, and that's because Anthony told me to take it very serious, and I listened. So, it's as easy as that. Also, in talking with Anthony, he followed up with me after our interview and asked if I could just touch on some of the diversity that was present in the Smell. He said he felt bad that he didn't really get to touch on that in our talk. And, that he was saying during his years at the Smell, it was a largely white, upper middle class crew of regulars and workers and such. But he said what's amazing is that somewhere in the late 2000s, early 2010s, the Smell scene got to be much more diverse and representative of greater LA. Sometime in the mid 2010s, he said when he went back to school at UCLA after teaching for many years, he got very interested in studying the racial and economic segregation in the city schools. At that time, whenever I went back to the Smell to see Jim and hang out, I was amazed at how diverse the crowds and kids working at the club were. These kids weren't just like passive spectators going to a concert and going back to their respective neighborhoods. They were starting bands, forging friendships, and crossing boundaries that they never would have had the chance to had it not been for the Smell. And he says, he goes on to say, it's something that I think doesn't get acknowledged all that much. So I thought I'd just throw it out there. Yeah, it's huge. Again, these are the kind of things, living in this sort of melting pot, or at least, mixed, huge urban environment that is Los Angeles. It's, I have the white privilege of saying, oh, I don't know. Everything just kind of works. It's just how it goes. I don't know, and it's, I'm guilty of that for sure. And of experiencing the privilege of being unaware, I guess I should say, of how sometimes, the discomfort or feeling of not fitting in and belonging because of your race and socioeconomic background affect those things. But the Smell, really is being one of those places where, according to Anthony, he saw, and I've seen it as well. But again, I can't help but just acknowledge my own weird privilege to it all, where I'm just like, cool, just kids hanging out. All right. I don't see it as that big of a deal, but I think Anthony's right. In a city that is as diverse as LA is, to create social and creative spaces in which people from all neighborhoods, all different kinds of backgrounds and economic situations, can come together and create things and participate in culture, I think is huge. It sounds huge. Again, I just call out my own bias, and I'm like, I don't know, just think it's fun. I don't know, it just seems like a good deal. I'm not being as I don't think I necessarily have the I don't hold it in as as serious of a light, and just because it's not really been my area of study or even acknowledgement, I just walk around. I think everybody likes everybody. This is cool, but obviously there is something more to it. And Anthony, I think through with his studies and his time and his his academic experience, was able to witness that and call out how unique that was for a place like the smell to do that. So another feather in its cap of the smell, right? This is the flowers. This is the month of flowers given to the smell and to everybody there who's volunteered. And obviously I can't, I won't get to everybody. Some people will go, I don't know, I never saw Anthony. I was like, well, if you went to the smell and from 99 to 2002, 2003, you probably saw Anthony. But again, like there's people like, why don't you talk to this person? Like, well, from 2012 to 2016, I wasn't going. I wasn't there. I was either on tour or raising little babies and changing diapers and waking up at 4 a.m. And I didn't have the energy. I remember feeling so bad. I think Jim had texted me at some point in that time, like, "Hey, can you come let this person in, or can you come down on this day for the show?" And I had to say, "I'm burnt. I'm done. I'm either not in town, or if I am in town, I'm so tired." And, I was taking care of our little family that we were starting. So it's the ebb and flow and the nature of everyone's life, but I think Anthony's experience here is really reflective of the state that the smell was in when I first really became involved. The sort of the creation of it with Jim and Ara and Jarrett, and then then a new sort of group. I think Anthony being one of them sort of came in and really made his presence felt, and and it was a big part of that. And then then Dean and I got to do a bunch of stuff that we did, and then the next group and the next group and the next group, as it should be. I think that's what really keeps an all ages space going for 30 years. So really excited to get to the time to even just carve out the time and think about all this stuff. It's hard to sort of put your own life into perspective and go, nobody cares about this, and maybe they don't. But I'm going to take a month to celebrate the smell and all things good that came from the smell and that are the smell still to this day. So go to the smell, go see shows. Anthony also calls out, he doesn't really have a presence. He's not selling anything. He's not doing anything, but he does encourage everyone to go support autistic causes and go volunteer and be part of your autistic community and at large, and help autistic children in any way you can in your community. So go do that. Go support autism. And here is my conversation with Anthony Berryman. Anthony Berryman, thanks so much for coming on Hyphenate. How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, I'm good. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. We're here to talk about the smell. When I first started going to the smell in the early aughts, you were a fixture. You were somebody I always saw at the smell. How did you first discover the smell? What was your first experience like there?
I moved to LA right before the smell opened in North Hollywood. And LA was just like a giant mystery to me. And I was going to shows like as much as possible. But I first started going to the North Hollywood location like pretty early on.
What were some of those early shows you remember going to see there?
Oh man.
Dean was
Thrones.
Okay. Dean was talking about seeing Melt Banana and the Locust there.
I was not at that show. No, I avoided the Locust.
like the Locust. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, oh man, Thrones and The Need. That was a really big one. Okay. That made a huge impression on me. I was a huge fan of both of those bands. At the Old Smell, I would say there was Out Hud and Chick Chick Chick. That was a huge one. I mean, that Out Hud especially, like they were like mixing. I mean, one of the dudes was just mixing them live and dubbing out everything. And I'd never seen anything like that before. And then seeing Chick 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 in a room that small was also insane,
Yeah.
But it was a lot of like, I mean, the smell, especially the North Hollywood days, it was me and Aaron Hempel and like a couple of our friends just like drinking 40s in the alley a
Yeah.
lot.
Of the old smell of the North Hollywood one.
The old smell.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I ever went to the alley part of the old smell. I mean, the alley is so much part of the current smell, but I forgot I remember there was a parking lot off to the side. I remember the parking lot, but I guess there was an alley in the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I've had Aaron here on the pod. Aaron from Liars.
From Liars. Yeah.
Yeah. How fun. Okay. So that makes sense. And where did you come from? Where were you before Los Angeles?
I grew up in Fresno.
Okay.
And so, I grew up in a scene that was just like incredibly violent, like cartoonish violence. And I absolutely, it just sucked. I mean, Fresno was an awful, hellish place to be a punk kid. When I was about 14, I was obsessed with the decline of Western civilization. And for me, it was like Black Flag, X, and the Germs was just like my obsession, as a kid. I mean, I was just like, I don't know if any of this still exists anywhere, but I need to go to LA like as soon as possible and just like see. I just really wanted more than anything as a kid to be a part of a community that was centered around music primarily, but just like creative people.
And were you playing music at that time, or what was your
in Fresno?
Yeah. Did you have a band or?
Yeah. My first band, I Blame Society.
Nice.
Yeah. We had, we were great. We had a song, Cops Are Cool, the Rest of You Are Fucked. If you can smoke PCP, you absolutely should.
Were you the lyric writer of this band?
I was.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So then you moved to LA and you're attending shows at the Early Smell, and then from being a fan and from being an attendee to kind of volunteering and being involved, like what was that experience like?
I started. So once it moved to downtown, I started booking shows. I did a series of improvisational music shows at the Downtown Smell, probably starting in like 2000. And that was really just based on like me and Jim having a lot of common interests in like improvised music. And jazz primarily. And so it was just sort of interested in like booking for one and putting on shows. And I never thought about like being like a part of the Smell. I mean, I think at that time it was just Jim. Jarrett and Ara had already kind of stopped doing the club. But then in like late 2000s, early 2001, maybe, Jim was just like, you should really just start hanging out like every show. It was that straightforward. Jim was just basically like, I'm doing this on my own. Like, why don't you just start showing up every night?
He needed the help with more hands on deck.
He did. And it was like, I was really happy to do it. I was like, going to college, not really content, not wanting to do it. And it coincided with me becoming homeless. I literally was living out of a Honda Civic and just started showing up at the Smell every single night.
Would you stay at the Smell? Would you sleep at the Smell?
No, okay. That was Mel's territory.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't looking for roommates.
For those who don't know, Mel, our old sound guy, he resided at the Smell.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no, I mean, the Smell was just like where every night would begin for me. And then I would just like end up either crashing on someone's floor or staying in my practice space in Vernon, or like on the rare occasions, actually just like fucking sleeping in my car. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, for people who don't know, or, what, you say you're looking to be involved in music and stuff. And what was it
Mm-hmm.
that you found at the Smell? Like, what, obviously, I know about it, but I mean, for kind of speaking more towards an audience, like, what was it about that versus, there's a lot of venues in LA. There's the Troubadour, there's the Roxy, there's the Whiskey A Go Go, or, or any of these other kinds of things. Like,
Yeah.
why did you find that to be
Um,
the place to be?
none of, I mean, none of those places like stood on any principles really.
Mm.
Like, I mean, there was the people that were centered around the Smell were really interested in like a number of things. It was number one, just like a very punk, and all this shit sounds corny now, but like a very punk DIY ethos that was like, we do this because we fucking love it. We have no like vested economic interests in doing this at all. None of us are getting paid, expect to be paid. And so there was that sort of that very like punk ethos at the heart of it. But beyond that, I was really interested and a lot of us were really interested in the history of Los Angeles and sort of where we fit, not necessarily where we fit in, but like what we were a continuation of. And I know that like me and Jarrett and Jim to some extent too were really, really obsessed with the Mask,
Mm.
the old Hollywood punk club.
Yeah.
That was sort of like the birthplace of punk in LA.
Yeah. What was it?
And we
The owner's
saw what
name?
we were doing is really a
Brendan.
continuation of that.
Yeah.
Brendan Mullen.
Mullen. Okay. Yeah.
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 Brendan Mullen. You know, I looked it up recently. The Mask existed for 5 months.
Whoa.
It was open for 5 months. And it just left this legacy of punk in LA. And so that's sort of what everybody that I knew at the Smell was sort of interested in doing, was like creating this space that was all ages, that like none of us were going to fucking make any money off of. And then beyond that, it was really like the diversity of interests that we had musically. Like it wasn't just like, oh, we're really interested in like punk or noise or folk or whatever the fuck. I mean, it was like a very, very wide array of music interests. And that was really appealing to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, but I interviewed Dean Spunt just recently about the Smell and kind of our experiences as being younger, kids, late teens, early 20s coming to the Smell. And there was this feeling of like, or characterization, I guess, from our point of view, that there was this kind of like, what do we call it? Like almost like kind of Victorian era, sort of like, the Los Angeles underground. This is a, post punk, and, we're like the Centimeters and Craig Grady or even Mac Man. There was this type of like, beatnik Bukowski sort of scene and I think us coming, white kids from the suburbs who were into skateboarding and, MTV was like, what the fuck is going on? It was very college, like smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and wearing blazers and with patches on the elbows. It was like, this is cool, but this is not what we know of at all. But I think going to the Smell in those kind of earlier days was like, this is a different kind of scene, And it wasn't that it wasn't cool. It's just, we just didn't know it. It was kind of feeling like, okay, these guys are older and cooler than us and they know about things we don't know.
That was a lot of my early experience at the Smell, like in the North Hollywood days. Was, I moved to LA. I didn't know a single person in Los Angeles. I just moved there on my own. And I was really interested in jazz when I was a kid. I loved fucking jazz music and I loved hardcore punk. And that was like when I found the Smell in North Hollywood. Jim and Jarrett and Ara were all like serious jazz heads. And I would eavesdrop on conversations that before I knew those guys. Like I would like listen in on like them talking about Ornette Coleman or, you know, Sonny Rollins or like Jonathan Silverman, especially talking a lot about Sonny Rollins, or just like whatever tidbits of information I could pick up. That's almost as much as of a reason why I started going to the Old Smell as going to see the shows. I was just obsessed with like absorbing as much knowledge as I could. Like I think I learned about Pete Cozy, Miles Davis' guitarist, like through one of those, you know, overheard conversations, and then slowly started like having more conversations face to face with those guys. But that was a huge part of it. It was just like the enormity of musical interests that everybody had. That was really exciting. And to what you're saying about like this like weirder beatnik, almost Victorian or whatever the fuck influence, you know, you could go to the Smell and see like LAFMS dudes playing. You know, you could see Rick Potts playing at any time. You could also see Joe Baiza from Saccharine Trust. Like, so it was this enormous scope of LA underground history that was sort of converging on the Smell because there was nowhere else for that. Like that shit didn't happen at the Troubadour. And I saw some great shows at the Troubadour. Like, you know, but that shit that just didn't happen anywhere else in Los Angeles. Like the Smell was really it.
It was sort of a home for the unbookable sort of misfits of the totally. Underground. You know what I mean? Where you weren't going to draw a crowd of 200 people. It was hard. It would be hard to get the attention of some of these more commercial rock clubs. And I guess that's a kind of a line in the sand to sort of to designate the Smell, while being a public performance space, was not necessarily a commercial rock club. In any shape of the word. It's kind of more of a community, I don't know, art gallery sort of space, or community sort of, I don't know, venue.
Well, to me, that's what made the Smell really radical, was that, look, we exist in the heart of the entertainment capital of the world. Is Los Angeles, right?
Sure,
we're in LA. And we're in the city that is all about the business of like making fucking money off of entertainment. And we exist in downtown, in the most blighted area of central Los Angeles. And we have absolutely zero fucking interest in making any money off of this thing. And that to me was like really like the beauty of the Smell when I started going there and started like, I don't know, working or helping Jim run the place, was this really, and I was super aware of that at the time. Like, this is a really radical approach to just like a community center, that there's no interest here other than like the art that's being made and created here and the community that spawns from it.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, because Los Angeles, for what it's worth and all of its, ugly sides, it's a huge, metropolitan suburban sprawl, with over 4 million residents. And then, the greater Los Angeles go up to 18, almost 20 million people that could easily, you could get anywhere. You could get to downtown easily. So it's a huge, massive marketplace, quote unquote, for, entertainment, live entertainment events, these kinds of things. And so it almost is like an infinite universe of possibilities. You know what I mean? If at any point the weirdest thing could pop up and exist, and there could be an audience for it, because there's just so many people. That's how I sort of look at, the ability for a place like the Smell, or sort of this deep niche underground bands or arts or anything that happens. Like, who the fuck is going to go see this thing? It's like, well, if you have 20 million people, there's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. You can get down, might be able to find 10 to 100 people to find your weird art. interesting. It's
Yeah.
what makes LA, impossible to drive through and beautiful to sort of make things in. It's all of these contradictions and hypocrisies, piled on each other like a giant trash heap. That's sort of,
Yeah.
that you can find every once in a while. The pressure and the isolation can be the source of weird art happening. In a place like the Smell sort of operates as a portal, I think, at times for that sort of thing, and for different communities that find it. It's like, oh, cool.
Absolutely.
We can exploit this open stage, sort of anarchistic, community driven space for my particular expression. And it's a kind of an open door in that sort of way.
Yeah. And I think this is just my perspective, but I think that when I was really involved in the Smell in the early 2000s, it wasn't yet what it would become later, when it became much more oriented towards younger kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? I feel like there was really a switch that happened in the late 2000s where it became like mostly high school kids. And this is just my take on it.
Yeah.
I'm curious if like others like agree with that, but in the early 2000s, it was not necessarily an older like crowd, but it was mostly white. And it was a lot of like upper middle class, like kind of petty bourgeois, like dudes like myself who were just really interested in like weird fucked up art and music. And it was a place for us to like congregate, hang out, drink a lot, and just sort of it was like a social club as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a music venue.
Sure.
Like,
no,
yes.
But it was an insular sort of,
but it was,
audience of a small group of people who were making art for a small group of people. And
And I thought sort of very mistakenly that was like the most important part of what the Smell was, that it was really like this enclave that was just for, people. Like, you really had to, just by making your way to downtown LA and finding the Smell in the early 2000s, like that was a way of like paying your dues. But it was just kind of, for us, it was sort of this exclusive thing. And that was what I realize now was like a colossal mistake on my part and in my thinking about it. Like, we had long talks, and this is really like when we got shut down in 2003.
This is the Great
and
White,
when we were,
following
the Great White.
Yeah.
So following that, we were shut down for like 6 months, and all the shows moved to Dean's space in Hollywood, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of conversations during that time about like, okay, well, when we reopen, we can expect fire marshals to show up. We can expect more of a police presence. We can expect like some policing where there was never any before. And the conversations were like, well, what are we going to do? Like, are we going to start telling people that they can't drink? They can't smoke weed like in the club? Like, and I was like 100% like that would be the death of the Smell. As soon as we start telling people like what they cannot do in the club, like the club's fucking dead. It has, everything beautiful about it is going to be over. And we're fucking sellouts. And like, Randy, I was so wrong about all of that, and like, we'd have these conversations and they would get heated, and Jim would just be like hanging back and like not really chiming in. And Jim just knew all along, like exactly what the fuck was going to happen, which was the correct decision. And it was like, no, like we're going to keep this club open And if that means that we have to be a little more conspicuous about like what people are doing, then fine. But like the most important thing is that this club needs to continue. And so then what happened was fucking high school kids just swarmed the club. And by the late 2000s, I remember Jim and I talking one night, and Jim's like, I kind of feel like a high school principal. And I was like, I get that, man. And so that's beautiful. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like we kind of touched on, where there was different versions of the smell, and it's sort of, I think Jim is obviously the one to credit or blame for any or all things that happen or don't happen at the smell. I mean, it's a one-man show.
All the credit.
He uses a community sort of as a resource to help run the smell, but also that's the audience. It's community, run and oriented.
Yeah.
But he's sort of the final word on all things smell. And I think there was that feeling. I remember at the time, even like Dean and I kind of being part of the younger side of things, and maybe it was ruffling feathers, even just our existence or participation there. But then Dean bringing in his girlfriend's band, Mika Miko, or, which was even younger, which I kind of operated like a whole other kind of younger thing. And then the sort of the popularity of proliferation of that scene. And then Dean and I would go on to do multiple public interviews mentioning the smell and talking about the smell almost programmatically. And as the attention was being paid to our band, we went out of our way to make sure the smell was credited. I think maybe also drew some attention. And I've had conversations with people like past guest Marcus Savino, where, who you've been in a band with, he was like, oh yeah, then you guys ruined the smell. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know we did that. But I think in a way,
what does that mean?
Well, in that, I think, and I guess then again, I can't speak for him. You have to, but we touched on it briefly. But the idea, and I think I can take credit on this to some level, that I'll speak for myself, that my artistic ambition and my maybe even financial ambition was to blow things, to bring awareness and to get more people involved. I had this kind of like ambition and fervor to bring attention to what I thought was good art and to my own art.
Right.
And maybe some fragile, independent underground scenes were not not everybody shared that same ambition or value of attention to be played to something. And maybe the scene couldn't handle a national touring, a band from that scene becoming a national touring act and bringing the world's spotlight upon it. And great. And I'll take that criticism. I'll take that thing. I didn't know any better. I thought it was a good thing. I assumed everybody, if given the opportunity to be on MTV or to sign to a Sub Pop, would be excited for that type of thing, or at least would have the opportunity to do it. Maybe I could share this, what I felt was a good thing. I could share it with the community that I came from. However, that may have perverted or changed, or maybe people got into it for different reasons. That's outside of my control. I can't apologize for that because I don't know why people do what they do. This was just, I was being honest in my own ambition, but again, but in the same sort of way of the smell, bringing younger people in, again, it's, it was just something Dean, like in my interview with Dean, he just talks about, like, it was just, the smell felt open-ended, like all possibilities were open. And not that it needed to be changed or should be changed, but more that it was a book that had not all the chapters had been written in, and he felt it an open space where he could be involved. And he was, his involvement was welcome, and he wanted to tell more stories and be part of that ongoing story of the venue. And so I think that was kind of the feeling, was like, and the best part of it is, as Dean and I have gone on as a band and as people and gotten older, that there's been, we talk about like our time there was short-lived, almost like, the way like a Mask, or maybe not 5 months, but maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And then there's been probably 12 different generations past us that Dean and I, or you were just not aware of. Like I knew the one right before me and the one right after me, but then there was so many other generations of involvement and excitement and bands and bookers and people there that I just don't know. And not that I don't care to know. I'm just mentally incapable of keeping up with everything that was going on. I went to live my life and wasn't volunteering there every night. And so I missed the evolution that continues to happen which I think is great. I love that I had a moment there, and then my involvement didn't, my leaving or my not like daily involvement didn't sink the place. I never thought it would. I never thought it should, but I think it's great that more people,
Yeah.
younger people, have found the smell and done great things with it in their own regard.
Well, let me just say that, I mean, I think Marcus's position is just colossally stupid. And yeah, that's all that needs to be said about that. But
I'm open.
But no,
I'm open to all criticism, because I think in a lot of ways I was very young and very brash, and I'll take all criticism. I don't have I'm not uncriticizable. You know what I mean? I'm sure I did things.
I think what Marcus is getting at, if I had to guess, is something like what I was talking about earlier about feeling like the smell was this, like, not exclusive. Exclusive is the wrong word, but like
personal.
It was like a personal enclave of people that, like, I felt really protective of the smell. And I think a lot of that had to do with coming from a city that was just so fucked up and violent and insane and unsafe. And when I found this space that was really safe for like true weirdos to like come and be creative, I felt really protective of that. And there's always the fear, and I think this is what Marcus is pointing to, is this fear that by opening the door and making it, a broader audience or crowd or whatever, that it's going to sort of dilute what's special about the place. And that was my thinking for a long time when I was involved in the smell. And I just came to understand. I mean, I came to see, like, that was just so fucking wrong, and let me just say, like, to you and Dean in particular, shows in LA in the late 90s and early 2000s were boring as fuck. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, shows were like people standing around with their arms folded and like stroking their chins. And like, you could see, like, Man is the Bastard just like losing their fucking shit playing live, and just the crowd of just totally immobile people just standing there and like not really not engaging with the music at all. And that was like every fucking show for years. And what happened was, and this really happened after 9/11, was there was a powder keg in Los Angeles of energy that was just waiting to fucking go off. And that is what you and Dean and others your age, I guess, which is insane because you guys are like a few years younger than me.
Yeah.
I
give the credit to Mika Miko. I mean, I think all the good shows we played was because we were opening for them, or they were opening for us. I don't know, man. They were huge.
I mean, that kind of way. I totally agree with you. I mean, Mika Miko they were amazing, and those shows were insane. Yeah. But I'm thinking really of like wives shows.
Oh God!
Like when you guys were doing that. I mean, that's when it started really, like, the shows themselves would just be this explosions of energy. And that was so necessary and so needed for the underground music scene in LA at the time. Because before that, it was really just like people standing around. It's fucking boring.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I think there was a lot of, not necessarily conscious sort of feeling, but just, there was a lot of that kind of, post 9/11 sort of music world was, it felt like there was something different. I mean, it's been documented in New York, and the AIAs and Liars and TV on the radio and all that stuff was sort of exploding from there. But I think LA had its own sort of thing happening. Well, it's funny. Jennifer Clavin's actually calling me right now. I'll call her.
Oh, right on.
But yeah, I don't know, but I think there was, it was fun, and the smell just meant so much to all of us. I mean, I vividly remember you coming to the video store I worked at and giving me your copies of the Keys to the Smell before you moved. And it being this like huge, it felt like a scene in a movie. Like, this is the thing when like, okay, from one passing of the sword or passing of the baton from one generation to another.
Yeah.
And you were very intense as you were known to be or could be. And just like take this very seriously. Like these are very important things. And I was like, and basically don't fuck this up, Randy. And I was like, okay, Anthony, I won't fuck this one up. And I didn't. And but that's how it felt. And so, that was probably 2005,
late 2003, or maybe early 2004. I can't remember.
Yeah,
it was right around there. So 0304.
So with great power comes great responsibility. So I was like, okay, I have the keys to the smell. Now I'm going to take this very serious.
Yeah.
But that was, I think, part of you helped shape my point of view of being part of the smell and what that felt like and how serious it should be taken. And I think I took it that way. And so as things were to go on, and there was a thing, I was like, the smell deserves credit for this, or deserves the attention for this, because this is where we came from. You know what I mean? And not unlike, Ramones had a CBGBs, or, different bands, known to come from a place. I wanted it to be known, like our band came from this place. This is who we are.
I remember, it's funny, man. I remember sometime when I'd moved back to LA, and so it must have been like 07 or thereabouts, and you were talking about making a documentary.
I've tried.
Is that right?
Many times.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I getting into an argument about this, because you were like, yeah, I want you to be involved. And I was like, fuck no. I was like, how are we going to talk about this thing that's like still vibrant and still going? And it's too close. Like it's too soon for this to happen. And again, I think a lot of that was just my pig-headed intensity for the sake of it, or just me being a contrarian just for the fuck of it. I don't know.
No, I don't think you were wrong, though, in the sense too that it was very much in the middle. But I think I had the time and the money to put towards documenting all the stuff that was going on in contemporary culture. And come to find out, now it's 20 years have moved on, and maybe now's the time for that footage to be seen. I was at a point where I couldn't get it made. I didn't have any. It turned out you need a lot more money to make a movie than I had. Yeah. I had enough to film it, but the actual finishing and the doing the rest of it, like I ran out of steam and money.
But what's interesting though,
the project.
What's interesting to me now is it's exactly what you were talking about like you're reading a book that several chapters have been written for, but it's not complete yet, right? It's like there are many more chapters to come. And that's what's fucking amazing about this conversation that we're having right now, because we're talking about a club that's still there, that's still going. It's fucking insane to me. I mean, The Smell is the longest running all ages club in the history of Los Angeles. I mean, I will stand on business and fucking say that Jim Smith has done more for underground music in Los Angeles than anybody in the history of the city.
Yeah.
It's gonna be 30 years that club has been there, and it's maybe he's still just the high school principal, but like that's the fucking man right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he did it so selflessly. I think that was the thing too. I've brought up in a few of these other interviews where it was never the Jim Smith presents the Jim Smith show at The Smell. You know what I mean? It was not for his glory, for his thing. If anything, it was, he was just the facilitator for the community to express itself in whatever way that is. Yeah.
And that is perhaps unique in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I
would say
like,
so.
Yeah, that's sort of that quiet power that Jim has, and is it's just like it's just so central to who he is. Yeah, it's never been about him, and
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. No, and I think there was always the kind of the specter too, because all ages spaces and DIY spaces were always sort of, short lived as a firework kind of thing, just like burned brightly, but shortly, that it was
Yeah,
always like, okay, well, is this the time? I remember making the documentary or trying to shoot all this documentary footage in 2007, 2008 and being like, this might be the last year. Like, I don't know how
right.
long can the smell go on? It's
Yeah,
coming up on its 10th year anniversary. Like,
yeah,
you really think it's going to go further than that? It seemed like a realistic thought that, oh wow,
yeah.
the smell turns 10. I thought that was worth documenting, and that, because who knows, and then fast forward 20 years and it's still going. And it's like, oh wow. But again, it's like, it's worth documenting. This is the chapter that I was part of, so I can only document
Totally.
my experience, and the rest of the chapters need to be written by someone else, and I think that
Yeah.
they should all be documenting it, and it creates a bigger tapestry of a scene. But again, which, when I think about like, oh, it's the nose on my face, to even do a or
Yeah.
to even do a month of shows talking about the smell. But really, in my feeling, is like, it scratches the surface. You know what I mean? This is nothing. This is a
Oh
small,
yeah.
almost feel like I'm not qualified to tell the story, but at the same time, I don't, who else is, what I mean? I think there should be 10 documentaries or 10,
Yeah.
different, podcasts going on about LA underground music and what's happened. But, until those
But
happen,
speaking
I'll do this, and then everybody else could do their thing. We'll put it all together.
speaking of those like short-lived places that just like burn out, fucking shout out to Dean's Warehouse in Hollywood,
Yeah.
because seriously, like that was also the smell. That was the smell
In situ
Hollywood or
for the
whatever
time. Yeah. When it
for
needed to be.
yeah for those like 6 months, and those shows were fucking insane. I have so many good memories of that place and that time, and we needed that. Like we needed that to keep this scene that we had in LA at that time, to keep it moving. While the
Yeah.
smoke could get back up to code.
Yeah, and that was fun. Yeah, and then we rebuilt the bathroom, the second bathroom, and everything had to be up to code, and the fire doors, and the wheelchair lift to the stage. There was all kinds of upgrades that had to happen in order for it to pass code. Um, I remember also then once we started touring, you had relocated for a time to New York, and we all stayed with you in New York. I think Jim had even flown out. There was a I think it was our band Wives, what was the Casual Dots and the Wrangler Brutes all played at the Knitting Factory. This would have been 2003. We all sort of stayed with you, so in some ways it felt like the smell, hit the road. The smell on tour.
It's funny because at that time I was like Jim and I were talking about trying to open up a smell in New York.
That would have been the time
And
to do it.
It would really, it would have been like the Fillmore, the Fillmore East and West.
East.
Yeah.
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 Well, there was definitely a vibrant scene that was kind of happening around that time that, that kind of centered around Todd P, the promoter Todd P, in one way or another, Market Hotel and these other things. It's very different than the smell, but
You know what? So that's really interesting that you mentioned that. I mean, first of all, I moved to New York just to go to school, and it was very much like I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore. Not right now. Like I was coming out of like doing the smell, and I really needed to like challenge myself and do something different. But I mean, of course, I ended up going to shows in Brooklyn, mostly like where I was living, and the Todd P stuff. I fucking hated, and I hated for if for no other reason, the fact that that motherfucker put his name. Like that's what the shows were. It wasn't like the bands. It was like, no, I was like, what are you fucking doing here? Like,
yeah,
like this is about you. That's fucking insane to
It's
me.
one way to do it, I suppose, but it was not where, but
It
it was not,
is, but I
but
mean,
this is why I feel like we were so, spoiled isn't the right word, but so privileged to at least speaking for myself, privileged to come up through a system like the Smell, or through a place, not a system, but like an environment like the Smell, where it wasn't about that. It was something very different. I was even telling Dean, like for the Smell will always serve as the high water mark and the low water mark of how good shows can be and how bad they can sound, or the
absolutely.
quality of
Oh,
all the criticisms and
terrible
all the
sound.
things that the Smell lacks. It also
Yeah.
excels in terms of community and organization and payment, all of these things. Like the
You know,
nothing. It's hard. I'll always compare everything I do, whether it's playing at the Hollywood Bowl or the
yeah.
laundromat down the street. What I mean? All shows will always be judged against my experience at the Smell in the
You know
early
what
2000s. So it's hard.
what I'm kind of like just realizing in this conversation is growing up as a punk kid, like there are like labels mean something. I mean record
Yeah.
labels,
Yeah.
right? There are names that stand for like a core set of principles or a sort of a creative streak that you can identify with and you point to and you say that. Like, so Discord, right?
Sure.
SST, Touch and Go. Like, those are the fucking labels that you can point to and say, like, that's my music. Like, that's my thing. And that's what the Smell also is, right? It's not just like one band, it's not one performer, it's not, one fucking record. It's like a collection of things that people experience together and that you could point to and you say like me, like that's me, like I'm in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me, that's what, and that's the difference between like saying like this is an Anthony Berryman production or like no, this is a Smell show.
Yeah.
It's like this is our fucking thing. This is one of these amazing things that like we all do together, and we do it for years, and then we fucking pass it on to like the next generation of kids who are just gonna make it their own.
Yeah.
But it's all the Smell.
Yeah, and I think that was always our hope, as the band No Age, and for all of our involvement, our first kind of blush of attention. We put a lot of spotlight and a lot of intention around our involvement with the Smell, not because it was our club, and not because it was belonged to us or we were trying to co-opt it in some kind of way, but really just in a way of sharing that experience, because it just felt like so crucial to who we were.
Yeah.
Like we would not be a band if it was not for the Smell. And, so it was so integral to who we were as because it was part of our community, but it was also, we could experiment. We had the confidence to create this music because we knew we had friends and community based around the Smell. Like we wouldn't write the songs we wrote if we didn't have a place like the Smell to play them at, because if we could only play at the commercial club or the sports bar down the road, those songs wouldn't go there. You know what I mean? Like we'd have to write songs that worked for that audience or whatever that was, we'd be a very different band. And so it was this kind of like in the sense of like, take a selfie in the mirror, like, hey, here's who I am. Like that was sort of us, like, taking a picture in front of the Smell and putting our name on it. Like, like the doors at Morrison Hotel. It was like, this is No Age at the Smell. Like, this is what we wanted to show everybody. Like if you're curious of who we are, this is where we came from. This is where we live. And that was for that time. And then it also goes on to the next one, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was, and that goes back to like, I think what Marcus was maybe chiding you about a little bit. I think that was like,
oh yeah,
absolutely a blessing for the club was like the attention that you guys got, the attention that Mika Miko and, and other bands.
Yeah. Abe Vigoda
from that generation. Yeah. I mean, I think that had everything to do with the Smell.
Marcus put a record out on Load Records with artwork by Gary Painter. I mean,
right.
It's huge.
Yeah.
There's no small
that's
feat
fucking crazy.
But not saying that had anything to do with the Smell or anything else. I mean, his band could do that in whatever way, shape, or form.
No, that had everything to do with the Smell.
Oh, yeah. Man. All right. Well, we'll start wrapping it up here, but yeah, thank you for coming on. what, I don't know. What do I label you as? I'll just ask you that. But now, because I'm going to put you down as two different things. I don't even know. With Anthony Berryman this week, my guest is Anthony Berryman, who does what? You are an educator. You are.
Oh, like what am I doing
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Right now, I'm a dad.
Your dad.
That's
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yep.
Father. Yeah.
Have you been an archivist, a writer? What is your area of study? No. What have you done any work in that regard?
No. I was, I'm a failed academic. Proudly.
Proud father, failed academic.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put you down as that.
But no, I'm just like in the context of the smell, I was just a worker.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of how I always put it. It was Perfect. Like, I work at the smell.
Smell worker.
Anthony
Berryman, smell means. Worker. I like that.
Yeah.
I can put that
there
down.
You go. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Well, cool, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for jumping on. I feel like, when asked or when presented with the prompt of, what would my smell month look like? How would I tell that story of my experience of the smell? You were one of the first people to pop up after Jim. Obviously, I want to get Jim on.
That's
there.
Cool,
man.
And
it just feels like so much of my experience of the smell involved you and your presence and your sort of influence. Yeah. Even after you had left, am I holding up the Anthony Berryman integrity of being a smell worker? Because I became the smell worker. You literally, from the keys passed from your hands to my hand.
Yeah.
And when the call would come, when the bat signal would go up, like somebody needs to open the smell, somebody needs to let the bands in, somebody needs to make sure the toilets aren't clogged and that the lights get turned on or turned off or locked up at the end of the night. I did that because you allowed me to do that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was like the easiest part about me leaving LA and going to New York was you and Dean. It was, and I talked to both of you individually because I remember going to Rocket Video and talking to you about that. But I did the same with Dean, and I could with Dean, like Dean was really wide-eyed. I remember in that conversation, Dean was kind of like, "Oh fuck," and maybe you were too, but no, knowing that you guys were like around and that you were going to continue, you guys weren't like going to drop out and just go fuck off and do something completely different. But it was that, you guys had that thing that we all shared, which was like, we have to do this thing. Yeah. Like, this is a calling. This isn't something that I'm just doing right now because, I want to meet girls or like,
yes,
whatever, like something frivolous. It was like, no, I have to do this. Like, if I don't do this, like, what the fuck else am I going to do with my life?
Yeah, I'm going down. And I'm going downtown to the smelly warehouse show where it just rains sweat, and to listen to an ear blistering band because I want to meet girls. That's what said nobody ever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
fantastic. Awesome. Well, Anthony, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
Do you have anything to promote? Are you looking to promote anything?
No, man. I'm promoting autism awareness.
Beautiful.
Fucking go hang out with some autistic kids, spend time with them.
Yeah.
Learn about it. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you later.
Yes, what an awesome conversation. Thank you everybody for being here. Definitely one of the ones that I'm glad I get to get down in the Hyphenate archives. Like Anthony said, autism awareness, it's an important cause. One website you can go to is autismspeaks.org. They got all kinds of information there. And World Autism Day is in April. And all kinds of things you can do to donate, to help support, become an ally, and just bring more awareness and just help spread, information and facts and behind the science of autism, and be part of the conversation around autism. Thank you, Anthony, for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody. You can make sure you rate, review the show. I think that helps. I don't know. Do whatever you want to do. Tell your friends. If this is something you're interested in, let me know. You can find me on Instagram at Randy S. Randall. You can also write to us here at the podcast, hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com. Share your music. Let me know what you're up to. If you got any good smell stories, I want to hear them. Find me. Let me know. If you give me a good smell story, I will share it on the pod. Next week, I think we have Jennifer Clavin from Mika Miko and Bleached, and Dear Francis, her solo project. It was fun to get to talk to Jennifer about her time at the Smell and the Mika Miko experience there. So tune in for that one. You do not want to miss out. And I will see everybody on Monday. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Are we going to start telling people that they can't drink? They can't smoke weed like in the club? And I was like 100% like that would be the death of the Smell. As soon as we start telling people like what they cannot do in the club, like the club's fucking dead.